Okay, hey everyone, welcome to my house actually, as these amazing surfboards behind me. You may be thinking, what mansion are we seeing today and what incredible price are we going to be kind of quoting in this insane Bel Air mansion? But I'm afraid the content is a bit different today. I actually had a weird situation a couple of weeks ago where I went to the emergency room and had a CT and an MRI scan and they found a brain tumor.
We're just under 300 a year.
Just for you, right? Not including all the other, how many neurosurgeons work here?
We have...
So it's obviously not the best news anyone's ever heard, but weirdly I have to say I've just been completely blown away by the support of the community. Huge amount of people have said this is inspiring in some way, and so I just thought it could be cool to show you guys a bit of the before and the after, me talking through right now in my mental state what I've gone through over the last year and what led us to finding out about this baseball-sized tumor in my head, to me going into surgery in 2 days and potentially showing you guys what it's going to be like in the surgery room, what it's like recovering, and how fast I can get back on my feet and back up to 100%. Or what I've actually thought could be awesome is if I can convince the surgeon on Wednesday to put a load of stem cells into the hole they've put in my head, then I'm going to turn into a genius. So you guys are going to be blown away by the amount of incredible skill and humour coming out of me over that time. But I'm going to give you guys a quick rundown. It's not something actually I've been posting about on content, as I'm sure you're completely aware, because obviously when you're having seizures, which I now know they are, but at the time I had no idea.
Start to be on my head, sorry. I'm trying to think right now. It's almost like a high, I can smell something.
It's been something that's been a bit crazy, but to give you guys the background, so about 18 months ago, it was maybe about 16 months ago, so about a year and a half, I actually started to have seizures. The first time it happened was in Wabi Sabi. If any of you guys have been to Abbot Kinney before, you may know that sushi restaurant that unfortunately actually burnt down and now they're trying to sell it. But I was sitting in that restaurant with my wife having dinner and I felt this very strange sensation coming on. It was almost like a clearing of my nasal passages, and then this rush, almost like of adrenaline, as if this euphoria would come over me, and I kind of felt like I was in the same part of the world, but it's almost like my perspective had changed. So everything seemed a lot more bright and awake and crazy. And then that led a couple of minutes later to me heavily sweating. And when I say heavily sweating,
Can you see how much it's just growing?
it happened more and more regularly. So I think what's quite crazy about it is it started to affect my short-term memory. And so I'd remember having seizures and I'd be thinking, oh yeah, yesterday I had one of those, but I wouldn't remember the exact amount that I'd had. And then I'd have some kind of memory of, oh, I was standing by a bin or I was at that table, and then suddenly I felt that rush kind of coming onto me. And so I'd be constantly reminding myself, actually I had 4 yesterday or I had 5 yesterday. And I think I just got to adapting to it. So as soon as I felt it coming on, I'd go to the bathroom, because obviously it's a bit awkward when you're standing there talking to someone, especially in an incredibly beautiful home, and then suddenly you literally got sweat pouring down your face. My short-term memory over the last 9 months has got worse and worse. So I would forget little things, or I'd watch a movie series or a television series and I would forget the episode. So I'd turn around to my wife and be like, oh, have we watched this? And she's like, yeah, we watched it last night. And so I think you get very good at adapting to it. So my mum's actually a doctor in London, which is kind of the weird thing, is that I was constantly relaying these odd feelings that I was having to my mum. And my mum's an anesthesiologist if you're in the US and an anaesthetist if you're in the UK. And she was an amazing doctor. I grew up seeing her work. And so I was saying to her, I was like, this is really odd. I was actually losing my short-term memory and weirdly becoming a lot less motivated and a lot more depressed on a daily basis. At the time I'm just thinking, well, I'm just going a bit mental. And that is the other weird thing. So if there's anyone out there watching this, don't just think, oh, it's just some clinical depression thing, because it's not as if I was, you know, in some other world. Like, I'm one of the luckiest people that I've ever met in my life. Like, I get to surf every day. I have the most incredible house, the most amazing friends, my wife's family, my family, everything. I've got literally, like, if I basically won the lottery of life. So it wasn't as if I was waking up in the morning and thinking, oh, I'm depressed because I've got a bad life. I was just having these really odd down emotions and really hard to get out of it and to actually wake up. But in my head, I'm thinking, why are you feeling this way, Ed? You're kind of going a bit mental because you literally have everything on a plate and there is no way that you basically should be feeling this way. So there must be something going on. And obviously clinical depression is another thing. And I think this is kind of clinical depression caused by my brain being pushed into that situation. But I wouldn't say you need to be thinking like, oh, well, I'm not feeling depressed, therefore this can't be a brain tumor. Because literally I've had, I think, 4 surgeons appointments. They always say get a second opinion. We did a lot of those. And what they really said is it's kind of crazy with the brain, unlike most other organs, where people are wired completely differently. So just because this is on the left side of my brain pushing into my temporal lobe and, quite a lot of the other lobes, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you had the identical tumor in someone else's head, they'd have the same symptoms as me, because I'm right-handed, which means on that side, I think a lot of that is my balance, it's my vision, my memory, but it can be very different for other people. It can be your creative side, it can be a whole load of kind of different things of you having depression or not, or whatever it is. And so I actually am just really happy. It was a weird moment. I walked into the ER. Luckily, my mum literally turned around to me and just said, hey, Ed, if you literally don't call the emergency line now, because you're having 5 a day, you need to basically call the emergency line and tell them you want to go into the emergency room, or I'm going to put you on a flight to London where she lives tomorrow. I'm going to take you into an NHS hospital and I'm going to get everything tested, because her friends, her neurosurgeon contacts were like, look, you need to get this looked at, because she thought it could be temporal lobe epilepsy. So it's a form of epilepsy where I was having almost epileptic fits, which you now know it wasn't. But she was quite worried, and this is actually, I think, maybe worse, but it's so hard to judge what's worse or what's better when it comes to your brain, because I think that it's just so up in the air, depending on size, location, everything. But they basically, I called the emergency line. I'm turning around to the guy on the emergency line and just talking him through what I've basically told you guys. And when I was finishing up, he literally just said, okay, look, I don't want to scare you, but if you can please get someone to drive you to the hospital. Do not drive yourself. Walk into the emergency room, tell them exactly what you've just told me, and please don't allow them to push you to some other department. Just literally say to them, look, I need to have this checked out now in emergency, and get a CT scan. I have an MRI, and I have to say, I walked in there and the staff were amazing. They weren't trying to push me anywhere. They literally turned around. They were like, okay, walk in here. We're going to just take some blood. We're going to ask you some questions. We're going to get the CT scan done. And so I'm very lucky that we had that CT scan, because what they're kind of saying now is, due to the size of it, I could be having strokes in the next kind of couple of months. And so effectively I could have lost consciousness, and that could have done some real brain damage where I would have lost, control of part of my body. I felt really sorry for my wife. She drove me there. She's sitting there in the hospital room, and I saw the guy who was the ER doctor walk in. And as soon as I saw his face, I knew there was nothing in me that knew that I was going to be getting good news in that. And I think that could be because I grew up in a hospital, environment with my mum being a doctor. But I knew straight away that there was going to be some bad news. And the guy literally said, look, we found something in your brain mass, and it's about a 5 centimeter mass that we need to now do an MRI scan on. And my poor wife, as I'm sure you can imagine, just erupted into tears. And weirdly, my first reaction, I don't know if this is the same for anyone else out there, if you've had a brain tumor and actually gone through the recovery and your reactions were the same, I think it'd be fascinating to know. But my first thing I turned around to my wife was like, babe, look, I could die in 2 months, I could die in 2 years. Whatever happens, happens. And let's just make sure we have the best time ever. And when I die, you marry someone else, and all I want for you is happiness. Because I don't know why it was, but my brain in that moment just went into this thing where I could imagine in 6 months or in a month, if we had some really bad news, and this still could be cancer. They've said it's 90% unlikely, but if I was going to be on my deathbed, I didn't want my wife to be thinking, oh wait, hold on, he's been thinking about this for the last couple of months and he's just saying this to keep me happy. That's truly how I felt. I just want the person that cares for me to be a happy person. And I'm 30, so my wife is potentially, if I die, gonna live for a lot longer. And so I don't want her to in any way be thinking, right, I don't want to marry anyone else because I was married and my husband feels like I'm betraying him. All I want is that woman to be the happiest that she possibly can be. And so I went into that mode. They then did the MRI. MRIs are really weird. If anyone's out there has seen an MRI or done one, like let me know what your thoughts are on it, but you're literally put into this kind of very weird kind of circular kind of shape, and it's actually quite claustrophobic, where you're almost sitting there and the thing is like above your head, and it makes the weirdest noises. So you've kind of got your head in like a thing that blocks you from moving it, and just these odd noises, and they're really loud. They give you earphones, but it's like really, really odd noises. I don't know if I can impersonate that very well, but literally it was crazy. And so I came out of that as soon as I knew that there was a mass in my brain. Literally it was like, oh, well, that's what's been causing me to feel depressed. It's what's been causing all of these like odd things, where in my head I'm like, why are you being such a crazy weirdo? There was actually something there that was causing it. And so oddly, like as soon as I knew it was there and what was causing that to happen, it was actually like kind of relieving in a weird way. And so basically what they've said now is it's a big thing. It's like the size of a baseball, and it's in the side of my head. And it's an odd one where your brain just starts to roll, not in I'm scared of surgery. And weirdly, Trey and I were just talking about this, and it's really weird, but I had never had surgery or a general anesthetic until this year. 2019 is literally going to go down in my life as being a big one, because I hadn't had any surgery ever. Mum's a doctor. I'd worked in a private hospital in my gap year between school and university. I'd been moving patients on and off the table that were unconscious. So I kind of understood anesthesiology and being asleep and general anesthetics and operations, but I'd never had one. And so I literally snapped my ankle in March playing rugby. And so that was obviously not ideal. So I had to have a full general anesthetic, and they were amazing. They looked after me, and they put a plate and 8 pins into my ankle. Unfortunately, that actually got infected. And so I actually then had to have another full general anesthetic and surgery in September. So March, September, and now we're in December, and I'm going to be having my 3rd one of the year. Which, when you think I'm 30 years old and I haven't had one surgery or one anesthetic my entire life, and then I have 3 in a 9-month period, it's pretty crazy and pretty weird. But again, weirdly, like I'm not religious, and that's kind of quite odd to some people out there, I'm sure. Grew up in a boarding school, went to chapel every morning. That probably obviously put me a little bit off it when you're 12 and you're being forced to go to church all the time. But there's now this odd perspective that I have, and I don't know what higher power I believe in or whatever it is, but when I look back on this year, it's almost like I got teed up to experience what I'm about to go through in the best way possible. Because I think if I had never had surgery and I'd never had a general anesthetic, and they're talking about cutting literally quite a big gash in my head, removing scalp and then taking this thing out, I think I'd be freaking out right now. But I've actually been in the hospital a lot this year. I've had an infection. I've had 2 operations, so I know the process. So I'm not really that nervous about that at all. I'm more just worried about my family and how they're feeling, and how stressed they're going to be when I'm under anesthetic for 12 hours. But yeah, so I'm just kind of a bit stressed. I've got the most incredible family, and actually it's a weird one where now I feel more relieved. I know what's happening to me, and that there is actually something that's going to get rid of it or kind of make me better. And so what they've said is they're going to remove 90% of it, hopefully, which is obviously going to be awesome, because my brain can kind of grow back into that space. Unfortunately, because if they do not remove 100% of it, there's a very strong chance it starts to regrow again. And if you're 60, if you're 70 and you're out there and you're watching it and you've got a similar thing that I've got, you should be good, because obviously it's taken a long time for it to grow. But because mine's grown to this size and I'm the age of 30, they have kind of tried to pre-prep me and turn around and say, look, there's a strong chance you either may need some radiotherapy to slow the growth of it back again, or you may need another surgery when you're kind of 60 or a bit older, because if it grows back to the same size, then you're going to kind of need that. And probably what I'm also going to need is a regular MRI scan every year, so that they can kind of keep an eye on how big it is, if it's growing anymore, and how much it's affecting me. So hopefully that isn't the case and they get 100% of it out, but I'm fully prepared that they may not get a huge amount of it out, and I might be in a situation where I could have bad balance for 6 months. They've kind of said the recovery after I'm out of hospital is anywhere between 2 and 6 months, and it could be that I need a cane to walk. It could be that I have blurred vision for a while. It could be that I have continual headaches. So I'm just kind of open, and I think there's no point at the moment in worrying about that, because it's just a waste of energy. And right now I'm on Keppra, which is this drug they've given me, which stops the seizures. So it's for the first time I haven't actually had one of those fits in 2 weeks, which is kind of awesome. And I'm taking it twice a day, 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. And so I'm already kind of starting to feel a little less weirdly like depressed and things, because it seems to be relieving some of that stress on my brain. But obviously I'm fully prepared that I could be in a situation where I'm needing a bit more care, and it could be 6 months before I'm fully back up and running again. But guys, anything you want to know, let me know and we'll come back to you. And hopefully this is not enjoyable, but hopefully it's informative and actually is useful for you in whatever journey you're going through, because I feel it. And I just say be positive, because there is literally no point in being negative. Thank you so much for watching.